When the police cruiser stopped right in front of my driveway, I honestly thought they were lost. This was a quiet, dead-end street, and I was a 6-7-year-old man sweeping his own porch, hardly the type to cause trouble. But then one of the officers stepped out, glanced at his notepad, and said, "The most ridiculous sentence I've ever heard in my life. Sir, we've received a report that you're trespassing on HOA property." I stared at him. Then, at my porch. Then at the giant wooden sign I hammered into the ground myself: private property, no HOA, trespassing. On my own land. Just a week earlier, I thought I'd escaped HOA madness forever. I sold my old place, bought this beautiful non-HOA home, and planned to spend the rest of my retirement in peace. And now an HOA I didn't even belong to was trying to kick me off my property. And trust me, this was only the beginning. Before we dive into the full story, let me know your location and local time in the comments, and remember to subscribe so you never miss another HOA nightmare. I didn't always hate HOAs. Not at first. Back in my 40s, I thought they were just little neighborhood clubs, people with matching polos, and too much free time handing out newsletters about block parties and reminding folks to pick up after their dogs. Cute, harmless stuff. But then life taught me a lesson. There are two types of HOAs in this world: the quiet ones and the ones that run their streets like a miniature dictatorship with a color-coordinated iron fist. Unfortunately, my old neighborhood belonged to the second category. For nearly 15 years, I lived under an HOA that fined me if one blade of grass stood taller than the rest. They once sent me a written warning, an actual typed, sealed letter, because my American flag was 3 inches larger than the approved dimensions. Another time, they threatened to take action because my granddaughter drew a hopscotch pattern on the sidewalk with chalk. You'd think she spray-painted obscenities the way they reacted. They fined me for leaving my trash bins out too long. They fined me because my truck looked commercial. They fined me for painting my door, a color they approved 2 months prior. It was absurd. And after my wife passed away, those little letters on pale yellow paper started feeling heavier and heavier. I didn't want to grow old arguing about mailbox height or whether the shade of my shutters was warm, beige, or neutral sand. I wanted a place where I could sip coffee in the morning, tinker with my tools in the afternoon, and grill burgers for my grandkids on the weekends without a self-appointed street monarch accusing me of violating Article 6, subsection B. So when I finally sold that house, packed up the last of my belongings, and walked out of that HOA-controlled neighborhood for the last time, I swore I'd never again live under anyone's rule but my own. And that became my only real requirement for my next home: no HOA, ever. My real estate agent, bless her patience, must have filtered out over 100 listings. Every time she started to say, "Now this one is beautiful," I cut her off with, "Is there an HOA?" And if the answer was yes, even a tiny one, even some voluntary garden club HOA from the 1,980 seconds that collected $6 a year for flower beds, I shut it down immediately. No more HOA drama, no more committees, no more fines for existing, just peace. Then one morning she called me, sounding oddly triumphant. "I found it," she said. "A non-HOA property, quiet street, big trees, good bones. A little older but well-maintained. And the best part, it's clearly marked on the county map as outside any HOA jurisdiction. Completely independent. I didn't even need coffee to wake up that day. I grabbed my keys and met her on the spot. The house was everything I didn't know I still wanted. A sturdy brick 2-story built sometime in the late 70s, nestled at the end of a cul-de-sac lined with mature maples. The yard was spacious without being overwhelming. The driveway was wide enough for my truck. And the porch, God, that porch wrapped around the front like it was inviting me to sit and stay a while. The moment I stepped onto that porch, something inside me settled. I felt safe, like I could finally breathe. We checked the deed, then the plat map, then the zoning records, then the county registry, and every document said the same thing: no HOA, none, 0, done. I almost hugged the county clerk. Within a month, the sale closed. I called my son and daughter, told them I'd found the house where I planned to spend the rest of my days. They were relieved, honestly relieved to know I was finally somewhere peaceful. The move-in weekend was one of the happiest I've had in years. My son drove down with his own kids, and they chased each other around the empty rooms like it was Christmas. My daughter helped unpack the kitchen, fussing over where I stored my spices. My neighbor from my old neighborhood, Mark, drove 2 hours just to help me lift my workshop bench into the garage. By sunset, we were all sitting on overturned boxes in the living room, eating pizza. My granddaughter drew a giant heart on the wooden floor with the pizza box grease, and I didn't care. No HOA. No rules. Just family and freedom and laughter echoing off bare walls. "This is it, Dad," my daughter said warmly. "You finally made it home." And I believed her. Every word. But looking back, I should have noticed what she didn't, the woman standing down the street watching the moving trucks with a clipboard in hand. At the time, she was just another stranger. Maybe a neighbor being nosy about the new guy. Maybe someone checking the mail. Nothing unusual, nothing to worry about. But she watched us longer than anyone would consider polite. And I swear, even from a distance, I could feel her eyes trying to categorize me. It wasn't until the next morning that her presence crawled back into my memory. I woke up early, made a cup of coffee, and walked outside to admire my new kingdom, a lawn that was finally mine to mow the way. I liked it, a driveway wide enough for the truck. The old HOA tried to ban a porch where I could sit in my robe, and nobody could find me for inappropriate outdoor attire. The sun was soft behind the trees. Birds were singing. It was everything I'd dreamed of. I grabbed some tools and headed toward the side yard where I planned to install a small wooden border to outline my garden bed. Something simple, something nice, something no HOA could ever tell me to remove. I knelt down and started marking measurements in the dirt when I heard the sound, smooth, slow, almost predatory. A car creeping forward. I stood up, dusted my hands off, and turned around. A black SUV rolled down the street like it owned the pavement. Tinted windows, chrome trim. The kind of vehicle people buy when they want strangers to know they give orders for a living. It stopped right in front of my driveway. The back door opened, and out stepped the woman from yesterday, the one with the clipboard. Her heels clicked sharply on the asphalt as she approached. Her pastel blazer perfectly pressed, her hair unmoving in the morning breeze. She walked like she was inspecting something, or someone. Then she smiled. Not the friendly kind. The "I'm about to take something from you" kind. "Good morning," she said crisply. "You must be the new resident. I'm Karen Miller, president of the Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association." For a moment I wondered if she had the wrong street, the wrong house, the wrong planet maybe. Because I moved here specifically to avoid people like her, I kept my expression polite. "Nice to meet you. But this property isn't part of an HOA." Karen blinked once slowly, then tilted her head like I was a toddler saying something cute but incorrect. "Oh, I'm afraid that's not accurate," she said, placing her clipboard against her chest. "This street, including your driveway, falls within Maple Grove's community boundaries. According to our newly amended plat, this area is under HOA jurisdiction. Technically, before moving in, you were required to submit a residency application and request usage approval for all community common areas. Common areas, my driveway. I felt the first cold prick of anger forming. "I don't belong to an HOA," I said calmly. "That's the only reason I bought this house." "The deed says—" Karen lifted a manicured hand to interrupt me. "Deeds can take time to update," she said sweetly. "In the meantime, we enforce the boundaries as officially recognized by our association." Then she flipped a page on her clipboard. "And according to our records, you are currently occupying HOA-managed land without authorization." The word hit like a slap. Occupying. Then the next one, trespassing. "You're actually not permitted to modify the yard, driveway, or side garden until we review your application," she continued. "Building anything, including that wooden border you seem to be planning, would be a violation of community guidelines." My jaw clenched so hard I felt it in my ears. I had just moved into the first non-HOA home of my life, and an HOA I wasn't part of had marched right up to my face to declare that everything I did on my land was a violation. And looking back now, that moment was the spark. The beginning of a firestorm I never asked for but damn well had to finish. Karen didn't leave after making her little proclamation. No, she planted her heels right on the edge of my driveway, toes practically touching the concrete, as if to prove the point this was her territory. I took a slow breath through my nose, the way my late wife used to tell me whenever I was about to say something I'd regret. "Karen," I said, as calmly as a 6-7-year-old man who'd just been accused of trespassing on his own land could manage, "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. This house has never been part of any HOA." She gave me a smile that could curdle milk. "That's what you believe," she replied, "but the association has expanded our jurisdiction several times over the past decade. As of last year's plat amendment, this street is subject to Maple Grove Estates guidelines and oversight." She tapped her clipboard like it was the Bible. "It's all here, and it's all binding." I'd been polite long enough. "Karen," I said, "I checked the county records myself. The real ones, not whatever paperwork you're carrying around." Her eyes narrowed just a fraction, not enough for most people to notice, but I've met enough bureaucrats in my day to see when someone's smile gets cracks in it. That may be, she said, still sugary but strained, but you're required to cooperate while boundary clarifications are resolved. Boundary clarifications, I repeated, for my own driveway. She didn't blink. Yes, I couldn't stop the laugh that burst out of me. It was half amusement, half disbelief, and maybe 10% I'm too old for this nonsense. So, what exactly are you accusing me of? I asked. Her smile sharpened. Trespassing. Now, if someone accuses a man of stealing or lying or cheating, that's one thing. But accusing me of trespassing on my own property felt like a special category of stupidity. You're kidding, I said. No, she replied, I'm quite serious. Until we process your residency application, and until you receive approval to utilize association land, you are not permitted to modify, occupy, or obstruct any portion considered common use easement. Common use easement. She said it like it was holy scripture. I pointed at the concrete beneath her expensive heels. You mean this, yes. And my lawn, yes. And the walkway to my front door, that is correct. And if I told you to get off it, I said slowly, wouldn't that make you the trespasser? Her smile didn't waver. HOA board members are exempt during compliance evaluation. That was the moment I understood the type of person I was dealing with, someone who believed her clipboard granted divine authority. I crossed my arms. Karen, I don't answer to your HOA. I'm not a member. I didn't sign anything. I bought this house precisely because it's not in an HOA. You have no jurisdiction. So I'm going to ask you politely leave my property. And that's when she broke the facade of amiability. Her lips thinned into a straight line. Her chin lifted slightly. Her posture stiffened. It was the kind of transformation you see when someone realizes you aren't intimidated and they take it personally. Mr. Rivers, she said coolly, if you continue to occupy HOA property without authorization, you leave me no choice but to escalate this matter. It will become a legal issue. And those can be costly. Costly. The word sat in the air like a warning shot. But I'd been intimidated by better people than her in my lifetime. Government agents, mortgage brokers, my mother-in-law. Karen didn't even make the list. What exactly are you threatening to do? I asked. She gave a soft laugh, the kind meant to make me feel foolish. We'll speak with law enforcement, she said. We'll notify the county. We'll file the necessary reports. If you refuse to cooperate, your behavior will be documented as willful noncompliance. That could result in fines, liens. Her eyes slid toward my living room window. You live here alone, correct? My blood ran cold. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it, light casual, like she was observing the weather. But the implication was clear. We know you're alone, and we'll make your life hell if you don't do as we say. I stepped closer just enough that she had to tilt her head back a little to keep eye contact. Don't ever suggest things like that again, I said quietly. And don't ever come onto my property without being invited. She didn't flinch. If anything, she looked amused by my anger. One day she said lightly, "You'll wish you'd been more cooperative," and then she turned on her heel and walked back toward her SUV. But she didn't leave. That would have been too simple. No, she got into the passenger seat. The SUV started. Then it rolled forward, barely, just a slow, silent pursuit car creep, and it parked across the street. Engine off, windows up, just watching. I tried to ignore her. Lord knows I did. I grabbed my gloves and tools, determined not to give her the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. But it's hard to act normal when a woman with a clipboard is staring at you like a zoo exhibit. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. At the 30-minute mark, I snapped. I stomped across the street and rapped on her window. She rolled it down only 2 inches. "Yes," she said sweetly. "Are you going to sit here all day until you comply with association protocol? I have nothing to do with your association. That is not what our paperwork indicates. Show me the paperwork," I demanded. She smiled. "Not yet. You'll see it soon enough." Every response was crafted to irritate. Every sentence designed to undermine my sanity. "Karen," I said, my voice low, "if you do not move your car, I will call the police." She looked positively delighted. "Go ahead," she said. I hated how calm she was. I hated the smug certainty. But more than anything, I hated that she seemed so confident she was untouchable. So I walked back onto my own driveway, pulled out my phone, and dialed. 911, the dispatcher answered. "What's your emergency?" I kept my voice steady. "There's a woman trespassing on my property, refusing to leave, making false legal claims, and threatening to contact the police about me for crimes that don't exist." To my surprise, Karen didn't drive away. She didn't panic. She didn't argue. She just smiled at me from behind that cracked window like a cat watching a mouse attempt escape. When the officers arrived 30 minutes later, she was gone. Her SUV had slipped away quietly, leaving only tire marks and the faint scent of perfume and self-righteousness. The younger of the two officers sipped his iced coffee and said, "Sir, honestly, this sounds like HOA drama. We get a lot of this. They tend to overreach. Can you at least tell her not to bother me again?" I said. He shrugged. "We'll file an incident report. But unless she comes back or destroys property, there's not much we can do." These disputes often turn into civil cases. Civil cases. The phrase tasted bitter. I watched their cruiser drive off the sun dipping lower behind the roofline of my new home. I'd only been living there for one day, and already I had an HOA trying to annex my life like some suburban empire. I finished unpacking the last few boxes that night with a pit in my stomach. Not fear, not yet. More like the sense that a storm was gathering far off in the distance. But I was wrong. It wasn't far. It was already here. The next morning, I opened my front door and nearly tripped over a piece of paper slid neatly under the frame. An envelope. No postage, no return address. Just my name written in the neatest, coldest handwriting I'd ever seen. I picked it up. I felt the weight. And before I even opened it, I knew exactly who had been there. I stood there on my porch for a long moment, turning that envelope over in my hands. I'm old enough to trust my instincts, and everything about it felt wrong. The weight of it, the handwriting, the fact that someone had crept onto my porch in the middle of the night. I opened it slowly, half expecting glitter bombs or poison ivy spores, the way some of my old HOA neighbors used to joke about. Instead, it was 2 crisp sheets of paper printed on expensive high-gloss letterhead. Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association Notice of Unauthorized Occupancy. The first sentence nearly made me choke on my coffee. This letter serves as formal notice that you are currently occupying HOA-managed land without association approval. Occupying, again with that word. The second sentence was even better. You are advised to cease usage of all common areas, immediately including, but not limited to, driveway, lawn, walkway, mailbox area, and roadway-facing perimeter. My driveway, my walkway, my lawn. Were they expecting me to hover to the front door like some kind of wizard? Then came the kicker. Failure to submit a residency application within 24 hours will result in daily non-compliance penalties and potential legal action. Daily penalties. For living in my own home, I laughed out loud. The kind of laugh that sounds a little too sharp, like a man who's either going to lose his mind or snap the letter in half. I folded the papers and set them on the coffee table inside, telling myself I'd deal with it later. I had things to do: unpacking, organizing, arranging furniture, adjusting shelves. The normal business of settling into a new life. But it was impossible to ignore the buzzing discomfort at the back of my mind. Impossible to ignore the way I kept glancing at the front window, half expecting an SUV to roll past again with Karen's predatory smile pressed to the glass. By noon, my nerves were frayed enough that I stepped outside to water the shrubs. The hose hissed, the sun was warm, and that's when I noticed a man at the end of the street. He was walking casually, hands in pockets, but he kept glancing toward my house. Each time he did, he slowed down a little more. Then he stopped, took out his phone, and angled it toward my lawn. Click. I called out, "Can I help you?" He jumped slightly, then smiled too quickly. No, just looking at the landscaping. HOA likes us to keep things tidy. I'm on the compliance team. The compliance team. That phrase dug under my skin. So you take photos of people's yards without asking, just documenting potential issues. On a street that isn't even part of your HOA. He blinked rapidly. "Oh, but it is," Newly added. "Didn't Karen speak to you?" "She did," I said, and I told her the same thing. "I'm about to tell you this property isn't in your HOA. His smile thinned. "Well, that's not what our records show." I turned off the hose water dripping from my hand like the last thread of my patience. "You need to leave." For a moment, I thought he might push harder, but he took the hint, backed up, and wandered away, still snapping a picture of my mailbox as he left. When I walked back inside, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Just one text. "You can't ignore us." I stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. But I kept the number. 3 days passed. On the surface, life went on. I spent my mornings adjusting curtain rods and tightening cabinet handles. I organized my tools in the garage. I installed the heavy oak shelf my daughter bought me for Father's Day. Outwardly, everything looked peaceful, like a retired man making a home. But beneath that peace was a constant hum of anxiety, the feeling of being watched. Every time I looked outside, there was someone drifting by a little too slowly. A jogger who paused in front of my house, a dog walker who spent too long adjusting a leash, a cyclist who circled the cul-de-sac twice without pedaling hard enough to pretend it was exercise. None of them spoke to me. None of them waved. All of them looked. And every so often a black SUV rolled down the street at a crawl, sometimes driven by Karen, sometimes someone else. It didn't matter. The message was the same: we see you. On the morning of the fourth day, I was out trimming the hedges when I heard a car pull into the street. I ignored it at first until I heard doors slam more than one. Then a voice behind me: "Sir, we need to speak with you." I turned. 2 police officers stood on the sidewalk. Not the same pair from last time. These looked a little older, a little more serious. Behind them, a black SUV idled, and Karen was leaning against it, arms crossed, smiling like she'd just summoned reinforcements. I set the trimmers down and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Can I help you, officers?" One of them stepped forward. "We received a report from the Maple Grove HOA regarding a possible unlawful occupation." I let that settle in the air. "Unlawful occupation," I repeated. "Of my own house, sir. According to the report, there's a boundary dispute, and your property may be partly located on HOA easement space." I nearly laughed. "Maybe. You came out here because of a maybe. It's not entirely uncommon in new developments," the officer said. "Sometimes HOAs submit updated plats." I cut him off. "This neighborhood hasn't been updated since 1981, and this house has never been part of any HOA. My deed says so. The county records say so. You can look it up yourselves." He shifted uncomfortably. "We're not here to take sides, but the HOA is concerned that you're refusing to cooperate with their verification process." I pointed at Karen. "She's been harassing me since the day I moved in." Karen's smile widened. "Sir, I've been doing my duty. We have community standards to maintain. And if someone new refuses to follow procedure, we're required to involve law enforcement." "What procedure?" I demanded. "The residency approval application," she said. "You have not completed steps 1 through 17. 17, I repeated. "Oh yes. Background checks, architectural review submissions, driveway usage, requests, yard maintenance, compliance. It's a non-HOA house," I snapped. Karen sighed dramatically. "He's becoming hostile. This is exactly why we contacted you." The officers shared a look, and for a moment I felt a flicker of panic. Not because I was in danger, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, but because I could see how easy it would be for someone like Karen to twist the narrative. A single phone call, a few fabricated complaints, a claim that an elderly man had threatened her. That's how reputations get damaged, how legal problems begin, how HOA bullies win. "Sir," the older officer said, "we just need to ask a few questions." "Can we see your ownership documents?" That at least I could do. I led them into the house, leaving the door open behind me. Karen stayed outside, watching through the window like a bored cat. I grabbed the file from the kitchen drawer, handed it to the officers, and waited. As they flipped through sale contracts, the deed, the county plat maps, the zoning records, every shred of paper, proving that I owned my land outright and that no HOA had ever touched it. They stepped back outside to talk privately. I stood on the porch, arms crossed. Karen drifted closer, pretending to admire my shrubs. "Well," she murmured, "this isn't going very smoothly, is it, Karen?" I said, "You're wasting your time." She leaned in slightly. "We can make this easy, you know. Just fill out the application, or pay the assessment fee. Everyone else here cooperates eventually." I stared at her hard. "Not me." She shrugged. "We'll see." The officers returned. "Sir," the older one said, "you appear to have valid documentation for your property. There's clearly a dispute between the HOA's submitted plat and the county's official record. This is not a criminal issue, it's a civil one. We can't enforce HOA claims. But we do advise you not to make any major alterations until this is resolved." Karen smiled like she'd won. I didn't let her savor it. "Officers," I said, "would you mind escorting her off my property? She's refused to leave before." Karen gasped, clutching her pearls in an Oscar-worthy performance. "That's ridiculous." But the older officer cut her off. "Ma'am, please step back. You need to leave his property line." She retreated to the street, face tight. As the officers drove away, she stood at the curb like a statue carved from rage and entitlement. Then she spat out one sentence that chilled me more than anything she'd said before. "This isn't over. Not even close." She got back into her SUV and peeled away tires, screeching against the asphalt. I watched her go gripping the porch railing until my knuckles turned white. I had the uneasy feeling she was right. Karen's taillights had barely disappeared around the corner when I felt the air shift. It wasn't just frustration anymore. It was the unmistakable weight of being targeted, a pressure in the chest, a humming under the skin. I'd survived enough nonsense in my life, government paperwork, career, bureaucracy, raising teenagers, to know when something small was about to turn into something big. And this thing, it wasn't small. It was a damn avalanche rolling down the hill straight at me. I stood out on the porch for a long moment, the evening sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the driveway she claimed wasn't even mine. I'd come to this house to retire, relax, enjoy my final decades without anybody breathing down my neck. Instead, I got a middle-aged HOA warlord determined to annex my property like some suburban dictator. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because I was scared, no, I'd lived long enough to know fear is rarely useful, but because I was angry. A deep, slow anger that curled in the stomach like coals in a fire pit, glowing hotter with every passing hour. By morning, I'd resolved one thing: if Karen wanted a fight, she'd get one. Not a physical fight, I'm 67, my back cracks every time I stand up too fast, but a real one. A fight about truth documents, county records, boundaries, laws. A fight she thought she could win because she had been winning for years, but she picked the wrong old man. Around noon, while I was drinking coffee on my porch and pretending my blood pressure wasn't rising, I noticed someone approaching a man in his late 40s. Salt and pepper hair, polo shirt, khaki shorts, and New Balance. Sneakers, the official uniform of suburban dads everywhere. He hesitated at the base of my porch steps. "You the new guy?" he asked. "That's me," I said. "Unless Karen's had me evicted overnight." He snorted. Wouldn't put it past her. Then he extended a hand. "I'm Greg. Live 3 houses down." I shook his hand, surprised by his firm grip. "Nice to meet you, Greg." He glanced around as if checking to make sure no one lurked behind a mailbox. Only then did he say quietly, "I heard you had a run-in with her." "Run-in is a polite way to put it," I replied. "She accused me of trespassing. On my own lawn." Greg sighed like a man who had seen too much HOA foolishness for one lifetime. "She's been trying this for years," he said. "Ever since she took over the HOA presidency, she's been pushing to absorb our end of the street. She's obsessed with expanding the boundary." "But my house isn't in the HOA." "It wasn't," Greg said. "Neither were most of the homes down here. But she keeps submitting new plats, expanded jurisdiction maps. Half of them get rejected, half get ignored, but she waves them around like they're gospel." "That explains why she was so confident," I muttered. "Oh, she's confident," Greg said darkly. "Karen treats this neighborhood like her kingdom, and the HOA is her army." I leaned back in my porch chair. "Ever happened to you?" Greg nodded. "First month I moved in, she tried to hit me with a violation for my mailbox being non-compliant. Said it didn't meet the height requirement. What'd you do? I measured it, and it was exactly the same height as hers." Greg smirked. "She didn't like that." I chuckled. "Let me guess. She tried something else. She always tries something else," Greg said. "Noise complaints, landscaping complaints, parking complaints. She got 2 families to leave in the past few years. They were tired of the harassment. Their houses ended up being bought by..." He paused, eyes narrowing. "Well, by an investment group. That's all I'll say." I raised an eyebrow, and Karen helped them leave. He shrugged. "All I know is she talked to them a lot. And then they sold." The implication hung in the air like humidity before a storm. "Look," Greg said, finally lowering his voice, "you seem like a good guy. Stubborn, smart, and that's exactly why she's targeting you. You're not bending to her." "I'm not bending because this isn't an HOA property," I said. Greg nodded. "True. But Karen doesn't care what's true. She cares about control. And she cares about making this street part of her HOA, because the more homes she controls, the more power she gets. And the more valuable the neighborhood looks to outsiders." I frowned. "Why me? Why start with me?" "Because you're new," Greg said. "New people are easier to pressure. They don't know the history. And older people, no offense, are usually tired enough to just give in." I barked a laugh. "Not this old man." He chuckled. "Good. Because you're going to need that attitude." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He jerked his thumb toward the street. "Come on, let me show you something." We walked down the sidewalk together, and for the first time I saw the neighborhood through Greg's eyes. There were cameras mounted on certain homes, not security cameras, but the cheap wide-angle ones HOAs sometimes use to monitor community compliance. A few yards had signs stuck in the flower beds, "Property under HOA review." Some houses had identical mailboxes, others had different ones, older, mismatched. Greg whispered, "The ones with the identical mailboxes, those belong to HOA members. The others, like yours, are non-HOA holdouts." We passed one yard where a woman knelt beside rose bushes, trimming them with military precision. She glanced up, saw us, and flinched slightly, like she feared Karen might appear behind her. "This place used to be relaxed," Greg said. "People painted their doors whatever color they liked. Kids left scooters in driveways. We had barbecues, fire pits. But once Karen took over, everything changed. We reached a corner house, larger, freshly painted with a brand new roof. But something felt off, too polished, too generic." "That was the Johnson's house," Greg said. "Nice family, real sweet. Moved here 2 years ago. Within a month, Karen had them drowning in violation notices. For what I asked. For everything. Their trash cans were too visible. Their shed was 6 inches too close to the fence. Their dog looked aggressive, even though it was a golden retriever." He paused. "They sold their house after 6 months, and the buyer I asked, he gave me a meaningful look. Same investment group. House got modernized, flipped, and bam, brought officially under the HOA. Why didn't anyone stop it?" I asked. Greg shrugged helplessly. "People tried, but the HOA board is stacked with Karen's friends. And most folks here don't have the heart or energy to fight back." I exhaled slowly. "So now she wants my house," I said. Greg nodded. "She wants all the houses, but she wants yours first." "Why?" He stopped walking and looked me dead in the eyes. "Because you're the only one who told her no to her face, and she can't stand that." I swallowed hard. He continued, "Look, Mr. Rivers, she's going to escalate. She always does. She'll send more letters, more notices, more people with clipboards, and when that doesn't work, she'll try involving the police again." My jaw tightened. "Then I guess I need to fight back." Greg nodded approvingly. "Good. But do it smart. Document everything. Every letter, every visit, every threat. Install cameras front, back, sides. She hates cameras more than anything. Why? Because they make people like her accountable." I felt something harden inside my chest. A resolve. A line I wasn't going to let anyone cross. "I appreciate you telling me all this," I said. "Really?" Greg gave my shoulder a firm pat. "Most people here want to stand up to her. They're just scared. But you might be the one who finally pushes back hard enough." "I don't know about being a hero," I said with a wry smile. He grinned. "Trust me. Around here, just standing up to Karen makes you one." We walked back toward my house as the sun started dipping behind the trees. Greg returned home, and I lingered on my porch a moment longer. I looked at my driveway, my supposedly common-use easement. My mailbox apparently HOA managed. My walkway declared unauthorized occupancy, and something inside me clicked into place. If Karen wanted to turn this street into a battleground, she'd just met the wrong old soldier. I finished my coffee, went inside, and opened my laptop. Because if Karen had plans to take my home, I was about to make her regret ever stepping onto my porch. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of fear at my age, fear rarely keeps you awake, but because of calculation. My mind churned like an old engine, rusty but determined, running through every possible angle. If Greg was right, and I believed he was, then Karen wasn't just being nosy or overzealous. She had a system, a strategy, a process she'd repeated enough times to think she could steamroll me the same way. But she had made one critical mistake. She assumed I wouldn't fight back. By sunrise, I'd brewed a pot of coffee strong enough to remove paint and sat at the kitchen table with a folder full of documents. Deed, title insurance, plat map, county zoning. Every scrap of paperwork the previous owner had left neatly in a drawer. I opened the plat map first, bold black lines, parcel boundaries, easements. Stamps from the county office dated decades ago, long before Karen ever dreamed of ruling a neighborhood. There it was, my lot, clearly defined. Driveway entirely within the boundaries, yard entirely mine. No mention whatsoever of Maple Grove Estates. I compared it to the one Karen had flashed at me, the updated one she claimed was official. Hers had different lines, new borders drawn in thick red ink, a chunk of my driveway highlighted as shared access area, the street relabeled. My side yard marked HOA managed green space. But the giveaway? No county stamp, no official signature, no date of approval. Just a page printed on office paper pretending to be law. I sat back in my chair, shaking my head slowly. "This woman's not just overstepping," I muttered. "She's forging reality, Time for documentation. I drove to the county records building, a squat, ugly concrete place where dreams go to die under fluorescent lighting. The woman at the records desk had probably worked there long enough to remember when computers were optional. "How can I help you?" she asked, without looking up. "I need to verify the official plat for this property," I said, sliding the parcel number across the counter, "and check for any amendments." She typed slowly, each keystroke sounding like a gavel. After a few minutes, she handed me a printed copy. "This is the latest approved plat. No amendments filed in the last 11 years. None by Maple Grove Estates," I asked. She squinted at the screen. "They submitted something last year, but it was rejected. Incomplete documentation." "Did they get approval later?" "Nope." She shrugged. "They never resubmitted." "Well," I said, "that explains a lot." The woman finally looked up at me, tired eyes, sympathetic. "HOA problems, the biggest," I said. She sighed. "I hear that more than I hear good morning. For your sake, keep paperwork. And get a lawyer." "Oh," I replied, "that's already my next stop." I walked into the law office with my folder of documents, like a soldier carrying evidence to court-martial the general. My attorney, Cindy Hahn, greeted me with the firm handshake of a woman who had probably sued 50 HOAs and made every one of them cry. She was mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, and a no-nonsense tone that instantly made me trust her. "Mr. Rivers," she said, "Greg told me you might come by." "Greg knows everything," I said. "I'm starting to think he has psychic abilities." She smirked and motioned for me to sit. "Let's get straight to it. Tell me what happened. All of it." So I did. From Karen showing up, uninvited, to her accusations of trespassing, to the forged-looking plat map, to the police visits, to the notice of unauthorized occupancy letter, that made me want to put my head through drywall. When I finished, Cindy leaned back, tapping her pen against her notebook. "Well," she said, "Karen's behavior is not just wrong, it's potentially illegal." "Potentially?" I asked. "I thought it was definitely." "Oh, it's definitely," she said, "but lawyers get in trouble for using that word too early." Then she flipped through the official plat copy I brought. "This map is the real one. HOA's version isn't. They're claiming authority over land they have no jurisdiction over." "Can they do that?" I asked. "Legally, no. But HOAs cheat all the time. They draw fake maps, claim boundaries exist where they don't bully residents until someone gives up." "That's what Greg said." "And Greg's right," Cindy said. "Karen is performing what we call constructive annexation. It's not legal, but it's common. They act like a property is part of the HOA long enough that people start believing it. And she targeted me because I'm new," I said. "New, older, living alone," Cindy nodded. "You check all the boxes for an easy target." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Well, she chose the wrong senior citizen. That's why I like you," Cindy smirked. "So here's what we're going to do. Step 1, install cameras. Lots of cameras. If Karen or anyone from the HOA steps onto your property without permission, we record it. Already planning on it. Good. Step 2, keep all letters, especially ones delivered without postage. That's a common HOA bullying tactic, no traceable mail trail." I pulled out the envelope. "This one." She skimmed it and raised her eyebrows. "This is perfect." "Perfect?" I asked. "Perfectly incriminating," she said. "Threats, fabricated boundaries, claims of authority over private land, no legal basis whatsoever, and delivered by hand. This is great." Her enthusiasm made me nervous. "So what next?" "Step 3, she continued. "I'm filing a formal notice with the county sheriff's office. Harassment, attempted extortion, boundary misrepresentation, and false legal claims." "Extortion?" I asked, surprised. "Yes," she said. "HOA, demanding fees or applications from a homeowner outside their jurisdiction, qualifies as extortion if they knowingly misrepresent legal boundaries." "Well," I said, "they definitely know." "Step 4, Cindy said, leaning forward. "I want to get my hands on their meeting minutes, boundary submissions, and amendment drafts." "Think they'll give them willingly?" she smirked. "Of course not. That's why we request them through the county. HOAs hate when someone reads their paperwork." I nodded. "Good, let's do it." "One more thing," Cindy said, pointing her pen at me. "Be ready." "For what for?" "Escalation. Bullies don't back down when you push back. They push harder," I figured. And Karen Cindy added with a dark chuckle. "She's not used to being challenged. She'll get desperate." I exhaled. "Wonderful." "Take it as a compliment," Cindy said. "She sees you as a threat. That means you matter." I returned home with my newly fortified determination. The first thing I did was order a 4-camera security system. The fancy kind with night vision motion detection, cloud backups, and enough sensitivity to catch a mosquito blinking. While waiting for the delivery, I installed temporary cameras, cheap ones I had left over from my old house. I mounted one above the porch, one near the garage, one on the side fence, and one facing the street. Then I sat on the porch in my rocking chair, sipping iced tea, watching the road like a hawk. It didn't take long. At 6:42 p.m., a black SUV rolled by, again slowing down when it passed my house. Karen wasn't driving this time, but I saw the same clipboard, the same predatory glance. I smiled, then waved. Slow, deliberate, like a man saying I'm ready now. The SUV sped up. 10 minutes later, someone walked up my street pretending to jog. They paused in front of my yard, stretching exaggeratedly, peering toward my porch. I waved at them too. I could practically feel their discomfort. 20 minutes after that, I saw a woman walk by snapping a picture of my mailbox from across the street. I waved again. They left quickly. For the first time since moving in, the power dynamic shifted. They weren't sure what I was doing, what I knew, what I planned. Good. Let them worry. The cameras arrived the next morning. I spent half the day installing them, and the other half configuring the security system. When I finished, I sat on the porch again, feeling a calm I hadn't felt in days. Karen wanted to wage war, fine. But now I had defenses. That evening I double-checked the camera feeds. Front yard clear, driveway clear, side gate clear, backyard a figure. A blurry silhouette standing just outside the fence line, watching, then stepping back into the shadows. My whole body froze. Not fear this time, not anger, something colder, determination. If Karen thought she could intimidate me into submission, she had miscalculated. Because now I wasn't just reacting, I was preparing. And I knew one thing for sure, this battle wasn't anywhere near over. The next morning felt different. Not stormy, not chaotic, just heavy. Like the air itself knew something was coming. I woke up before sunrise, joints cracking like bubble wrap, and shuffled to the kitchen to make coffee. As the pot sputtered and steamed, I couldn't shake the memory of that silhouette lingering near my backyard the night before. Was it Karen, someone she sent? Or just a neighbor taking a nighttime stroll in the most suspicious way possible? I didn't know. But the fact that someone thought they could linger there at all only strengthened my resolve. After breakfast, I checked the cameras again. No new activity overnight. That silhouette had been the last visitor, at least the last one caught on film. But this was the suburbs. People loved sneaking around thinking nobody sees them. Well, now somebody did. By mid-morning, I felt restless. Not anxious, just ready. Ready for the inevitable next strike Karen was going to throw my way. I'd lived long enough to understand people like her. When their first attempts fail, they don't retreat, they double down. They escalate. They blow things so completely out of proportion that sane people get exhausted and give up just to make it stop. But I wasn't giving up. Around 1:30 a.m., I stepped outside to sweep the porch, mostly out of habit. That's when I noticed something odd. My mailbox was wide open, the flag lifted, even though I hadn't placed anything inside. I walked down the driveway and checked. Inside was another letter. Thick envelope. Same handwriting as before. No stamp. I didn't open it, not yet. I wanted evidence first. So I took out my phone, took pictures of the mailbox, the letter inside, and the camera overhead that surely caught whoever had delivered it. Then I slid the envelope out and peeled it open. Inside, the message was even more unhinged than the last one. Final notice of trespassing. Immediate action required. It went on for 2 full pages, describing how I was occupying association space, refusing to cooperate, and endangering community cohesion. There was even a new phrase, habitual noncompliance. Habitual. I'd lived here less than 2 weeks. Then came the threat. Failure to resolve this matter will result in enforcement measures, including but not limited to the involvement of law enforcement, civil penalties, and potential physical removal. Physical removal. I stood there on the street, sunlight warming my face, reading the sentence again and again. Physical removal. Karen had officially lost her mind. I carried the letter inside, scanned it into my computer, attached the images, and forwarded everything to Cindy with the subject line, "She's escalating." 2 minutes later, my phone rang. Cindy didn't waste time on greetings. "Do not engage with them directly," she ordered. I haven't. Good. Because this letter crosses several legal lines. Threatening physical removal. That's borderline criminal intimidation. It's a bit more than borderline from where I'm standing. Keep the original. I'll draft a formal complaint today. Good, I said. Because I'm getting real tired of this circus. I warned you she'd escalate, Cindy replied. And I listened, I said. I installed cameras. I kept evidence. What's next? Next, Cindy exhaled. Next, we prepare for the retaliation. I didn't like the sound of that. Retaliation. Oh yes, she said matter-of-factly. Karen won't stop now. The HOA board probably believes they're in the right because she convinced them they are. She'll rally them behind her. And when they feel cornered, they'll act like they have authority they don't actually possess. Cindy, what exactly does that mean? It means she said they're going to send people HOA enforcers, volunteers, board members, maybe even a couple of hired compliance officers. They'll come to your house claiming to serve notices or inspect your property. It's all intimidation. Well, I said they'd better hope they look good on camera, Cindy snorted. Just don't open your door for them. And call the sheriff if they step foot on your land. I wish she didn't sound so sure this would happen. But she was right. At exactly 2:14 p.m., my doorbell rang. Not a polite ring, not a hesitant ring, but a long, aggressive, impatient ring that sounded like someone leaning on the button. I checked the camera feed on my phone, and my stomach tightened. 2 large men stood on my porch wearing matching black polo shirts with a gold HOA emblem stitched over their hearts. One had a shaved head and arms like tree trunks. The other wore sunglasses and had the stance of someone who enjoyed cracking knuckles for intimidation. They looked like mall cops who couldn't pass the exam, so they settled for the next best thing, HOA muscle. Between them stood Karen, of course, clipboard in hand, smile sharper than a butcher's knife, the queen of delusion herself. I didn't answer the door. I cracked the window instead. State your business, I called down. Karen's smile widened, and she spoke in a warm, friendly tone dripping with poison. Mr. Rivers, we're here to issue the final enforcement notice on behalf of the Maple Grove Estates Homeowners Association. Not interested, I said. You need to step outside, she continued, ignoring me. We need to conduct a formal exterior compliance inspection over my dead body. That can be arranged, one of the men muttered, cracking his knuckles. I froze. Not in fear, in disbelief. Karen slapped his arm lightly. What he means is, we can't leave until this matter is resolved. I laughed coldly. And what matter is that? You are illegally occupying association land, she said, and we are authorized to remove unauthorized structures if necessary. Structures, I repeated, like what she pointed with her clipboard. To begin with, your fence. My fence, I said, is on my land. That's not what our map shows. Your map isn't real, Karen. The county rejected it. Her jaw twitched, just a tiny betrayal of her slipping confidence. But then she smoothed it out, lifting her chin defiantly. We choose not to recognize the county's previous version, she said. You don't get to choose. Actually, she replied, we do. Her arrogance was astonishing. So I said, you're telling me you came here with 2 oversized buffoons to tear down my fence. Our officers, she corrected, are here for safety. Just in case. In case what? In case you resist. I shook my head. You're unbelievable. Thank you, she said, as if I'd complimented her. I pulled out my phone. Karen, you have 10 seconds to get off my property. Or what she asked, mockingly. You'll call the police again. They already told you it's a civil matter. That's why I said calmly, I'm calling the sheriff. The 2 men shifted uneasily. Karen's smile cracked. And I dialed. Sheriff's deputies arrived in under 10 minutes. But they weren't the same officers as before. These deputies were older, more serious men who looked like they'd broken up bar fights and chased down real criminals, not HOA, retirees gone wild. Karen tried to intercept them, waving her clipboard like it was a badge. Officers, thank goodness you're here. This man is refusing to comply with. One deputy held up a hand. Ma'am, please step back. He approached me instead. You the homeowner? Yes, sir. You the one who called about trespassers? Yes, sir. He nodded, then turned to Karen and her 2 officers. Ma'am, these men with you? Yes, she said confidently. They're with the HOA compliance team. The deputy looked them up and down. You 2 licensed for code enforcement, security, anything? They said nothing. Thought so, he said. Ma'am, unless these gentlemen have legal authorization, which they don't, they're trespassing, same as you. Karen sputtered. We're enforcing HOA regulations. This is association land. The deputy shook his head. We checked the county database before coming. This property is private. It is not, let me repeat, not under HOA jurisdiction. Karen went pale. The deputy continued, voice firm. You will leave this property immediately. If you or your officers return, you will be removed and charged with harassment, trespassing, and possibly attempted coercion. Her mouth opened and closed like a goldfish suffocating. But But he's the one breaking the rules. What rules? The deputy asked. Our rules? He sighed. Ma'am, HOA rules don't apply here. Get off his property. Now. She didn't move. He stepped forward. Now. That did it. The two men backed away first. Karen followed, shaking with fury so intense I thought she might actually combust. She shot me a look that could have melted steel. This isn't the end, she hissed. For you, I replied calmly. I think it might be. They retreated to their SUV. The deputies waited until they were gone. Then one of them turned to me and said, Document everything, sir. This woman's trouble. All ready, I said. He nodded. Good. Because this isn't the last you'll hear from her. And as I stood alone on my porch again, watching the last sheriff's cruiser disappear down the street, I felt the shift. The war had officially begun. When the sheriff's cruisers disappeared around the bend, the street finally fell quiet, eerily quiet. No SUVs idling in driveways. No joggers taking reconnaissance laps around my yard. No clipboard-wielding zealots measuring my mailbox. For the first time since moving in, I breathed a full, uninterrupted breath. But I'd learned enough in my 67 years to know silence isn't peace. Silence is what bullies create when they're regrouping, and Karen was the type to regroup with a vengeance. I spent the next few hours doing what any reasonable man would do after being threatened with physical removal by an HOA president and her pair of volunteer bodyguards. I cleaned my gutters. Not because they needed cleaning, but because that's what men my age do when we need to feel grounded. There's something therapeutic about scraping leaves and sludge out of metal troughs while muttering curses about HOA insanity under your breath. By late afternoon, I'd worked up enough sweat to cool the fire in my chest. I came back inside, poured myself a glass of iced tea, and sat down at the kitchen table to upload the latest footage to my external hard drive. The video of Karen and her enforcers threatening me was going straight into the evidence vault. I was halfway through labeling files when my phone buzzed. Cindy, I answered. You're calling early. Usually lawyers wait until business hours to deliver bad news. This isn't bad news, she said. This is big news. Big good or big bad, Big Karen is in more trouble than she can comprehend. That got my attention. I'm listening. Remember how I told you we were filing a formal request for HOA meeting minutes, boundary submissions, and administrative documents? Yeah. Well, the county forwarded everything to me this morning. And your HOA president might have forged at least 4 signatures and perhaps an entire amendment proposal. I blinked. Forged. Forged, she repeated. And she didn't just forge homeowner signatures, she forged board approval documentation too. If this is validated, that's criminal. I let out a low whistle. So she's not just incompetent, she's a fraud. And a sloppy one, Cindy added. Her handwriting on the fake approval letter matches the handwriting from the envelope she shoved under your door. I laughed so hard, I nearly spilled my tea. Karen writes her threats and her forgery in the same font. Oh, it gets better, Cindy said. One of the county investigators noticed something odd in the HOA's budget filings. Payments made to a consulting contractor called Pine Ridge Resources. And it's a shell company, she said. Registered to a P.O. box 2 towns over. Let me guess, I said. Karen's name is linked to it. Her husband Cindy corrected, but we all know what that means. The puzzle pieces clicked together in my mind with the force of a sledgehammer. Karen wasn't just trying to expand the HOA, she was profiting from it. If she can incorrectly fold properties into the HOA, Cindy explained, the association collects more dues, and with more dues, they can funnel more money into Pine Ridge Resources, where she gets her cut. I rubbed a hand over my face. So she's been annexing homes for profit. Yes, Cindy said. And yours isn't the first. Greg mentioned 2 families who sold under pressure. They were targeted, she confirmed. The signatures approving their integration were forged. A long silence stretched between us. Not fear, not shock. Vindication. Well, I said, finally, what now? Now Cindy said, we file complaints. Real ones. With the county attorney, with the sheriff, with the DA's office. We let them investigate. My jaw tightened. And Karen, she's going to panic, Cindy said. Get ready. Turns out Cindy was right. Panic arrived at 7:02 p.m. I was sitting on the couch, reading through an old newspaper when a car screeched to a stop outside. Not the calm roll of Karen's SUV. Not the slow crawl of a compliance volunteer. This was frantic, desperate, the sound of someone losing control. I opened my front door just in time to see Karen storming up my driveway, face blotchy red hair, wild in the breeze, clutching a stack of papers like a madwoman who had printed 50 copies of her own downfall. "You!" she shouted. "No thank you," I replied calmly. "I'm not accepting visitors right now." "You think you can do this to me?" she screamed. I tilted my head. "Do what you filed. A complaint," she shrieked. "Multiple complaints." "No," I corrected. "I filed multiple accurate complaints." "Big difference." She marched closer. "You're trying to ruin me. I'm just defending my home," I said. "You're the one who tried to drag me into an HOA I don't belong to. This neighborhood needs order," she bellowed. "People like you disrupt our harmony." "Harmony," I laughed. "Lady, you sent armed goons to my doorstep." "They are not goons," she snapped. "Oh," I asked. "Do they go through a training program or just crack knuckles and call it a day?" Her voice pitched higher. "You have no idea who you're messing with." "Oh, I really do," I said. Cindy filled me in on everything. Pine Ridge Resources, the forged signatures, the fake plat map. Her face drained of color. "You," she whispered. "You don't know anything. I know enough." Her hands shook. "You're lying." "Actually," I said, tapping the camera mounted above my door, "I document everything." Unlike someone, I don't forge documents. Karen stepped forward like she planned to lunge at me, but before she could make a bigger mistake, a blinding flash of red and blue lit up the street. A sheriff's cruiser. Then another. Then a county vehicle. Karen froze. I didn't. I stepped back and folded my arms as the first deputy approached. "Mr. Rivers, that's me. We'd like to speak with Miss Miller." Karen's eyes snapped to him. "Why? I didn't do anything." "That's what the investigation will determine," the deputy said calmly. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." She staggered back. "This is harassment. He's lying. He's turning the whole community against me." "Ma'am," the deputy repeated, "please step away from the homeowner." Karen looked at me, tears welling, not of remorse but of rage. Pure, unfiltered rage from a woman who could not comprehend losing control. "You'll pay for this," she hissed. "No," I said softly. "I'm done paying for anything that has your name on it." The deputies escorted her toward the cruiser. She fought the whole way, screaming, kicking, cursing. "You can't do this. I am the HOA president. I make the rules." "No, ma'am." One deputy finally snapped the law, "makes the rules." They put her in the back seat, shut the door, drove away. And just like that, the nightmare evaporated. The street was still again, peaceful, safe. Greg walked over a minute later, hands in pockets, whistling low. "Well," he said, "I guess she's not coming to the block party next month." I laughed. Hard. "I'll bring the potato salad." When the dust finally settled, Karen was removed from the HOA board. The county froze all of her pending boundary proposals. Investigators uncovered her shell company scheme, and neighbors who'd been bullied for years came forward with their own stories. Some cried, some laughed. Most simply said, "Thank you," not because I was special, not because I was brave, but because I said the one word Karen's victims had been too exhausted to say no. Sometimes that's all it takes to stop a bully. I learned something important through all of this, something I'd like to pass on to anyone watching. You don't have to be young or strong or loud to stand up for yourself. You just have to refuse to surrender. If you've ever faced a Karen, an HOA tyrant, or any bully who tried to control your life, share your story below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe. There are more HOA nightmares coming, and you won't want to miss what happens next.